This is going to be a very long video. Hi pals, it is me, Artie, they them pronouns only. My window is open a little bit, so I'm sorry if there's more noise than usual. This video is going to be my Married at First Sight UK 2022 season info dump. Because even though I've had a bunch of friends watching it, none of them talked to me enough about it. So it's going to be here, babes. The season officially concluded itself last week. I've pre-prepared myself with little images to remind me who everyone is. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to go couple by couple as much as possible, you know? Some couples I have less to say. Some I have lots to say. Of course, the usual disclaimer that everything I say is based off of the edit of the TV show and maybe some bits and pieces I've seen on the individual people's Instagram pages and some things that I've read in the news or seen come up in the news. Obviously, I do not know any of these people. These are just my opinions based off of what I saw on the programme. So if you disagree, that is fine. If I'm a bit mean, let me live. I know that what I think and what I am saying is based off of a very warped perception of each of these people. That is not the entirety of everyone. So with that, I'm going to start with Jess and PJ because they left like 2 or 3 weeks in. I really liked PJ and I was very sad that he didn't get to be on the show for longer, and I was very sad who he ended up being paired with. I know they say that they found a best mate on this programme, which is what a lot of people have said in this season of the UK one, which is like cool, fine, but also I don't know if that will still be the case after you've watched the show airing. Because she never told him the truth. I don't think I remember her ever telling him the truth officially, that the reason why she was put off by him was because of his job. PJ is a stripper and he is the I don't know what you call it, but like he is the final man who is completely naked. You know, vibes. He has a kid to support. He did used to live not at home with his family, but now lives with his parents, I believe is what he said on the show. Jess is a dental nurse assistant, something like that. She lives very independently, apparently, and has some cats. Yeah. She threw a strop on the wedding day when he told her about his job. And then from then onwards decided that he was incapable of providing for her and had no ambitions for his life, which was a lot to take from one job that probably pays really well. And there was a lot of her saying stuff like, we would never see each other because we'd work opposite shifts, and it's like, that's not how that works, but okay. As if he would never have a weekend or evening off. Like, you know, he has a kid, like of course he's gonna have evenings and weekends off sometimes. To me, they were all just excuses. She didn't want to date him after she found out that he was basically an SW, and that's basically what being a stripper is. He used the word stripper as well. I'm not using that word. He used the word. But one of the other contestants' mum went to go watch his show. So I'm very sad about that. I think PJ deserved better. And low-key, I would have, I don't know, maybe Gemma, maybe Sophie. Some people, I think on Maths Unveiled, put him with Keisha. Keisha? I've now suddenly forgotten how to say her name. I'm sorry. So that was couple number 1. Bye. In the bin. It was very sad because he also clearly seemed to be trying really hard and didn't understand what he was doing wrong. And the experts kept putting it on him and allowing it to be put on him. I have a lot to say about this season on the experts and how they've conducted this year's experiments. I'm so pissed. And then, okay, the next shortest couple, I suppose, were Richie and Lana. They were the sort of oldest couple there. Richie is in his 50s. He's been in bands all his life, never really had like a serious long-term relationship, never fallen in love. She's been married a bunch of times, has a kid, you know, didn't end well. I don't know what happened. She seemed to vibe with him at the wedding, seemed to have problems on the honeymoon, which most of them did. Like, I don't think any of them had a great honeymoon, to be honest. Then they started to get a bit closer again, but Lana for some reason felt like that she was doing a lot of like teaching how to be in a relationship kind of work, which is not what she was prepared to be doing. But they seem to have been getting closer, and then suddenly, like the end of the week, they were like, no, we've had enough. And they had some kind of argument. I don't even remember how that ended, to be honest. I just remember he was angry with her for something and she was angry with him for how he responded to something. You know, silly petty things, but I think they're like on amicable terms after the show, and that's kind of it. I'm trying to decide who next, because the rest of these are so I'll go with Keisha and Kwame. I thought they were a great match, to be honest. I thought they were a really good match. I did have some red flags off of Kwame. He has a relationship podcast, but it has to go on Married at First Sight. Okay, something wasn't adding up. He also, he was very good at talking around his thoughts and feelings, giving answers that politicians would give. You know, a non-answer is what a lot of people said, even the experts. I felt like he was slowly getting a little bit better at that, but he also would say things like, you know, he would usually go for a more petite woman. He only said this a few times, and I don't think he saw it as a problem per se, that Keisha is a very voluptuous woman. They both have kids. He wasn't super great at listening and talking to Keisha about her, like, parts of her life / her past that were very difficult for her, like particularly getting pregnant at 15, and that's when she had her first son. He also didn't actually introduce her to any of his family. Only his friends went to the wedding. Homestays, he literally didn't introduce her to his family, didn't show her his home. They stayed in an Airbnb. Red flags, but also like things that could have been managed and dealt with earlier and better if the experts actually did anything. The one thing the experts did was this expert lady came in to help them sort of initiate intimacy more, and it worked. So why? My main problem across the board in this series is the experts didn't watch enough of what was going on with these people. They did not intervene enough, which I think is what I said last year for the last year's UK Married at First Sight. And they were getting the complete wrong end of the stick with so many people, and then not being able to not interfere, but like, you know, not being able to engage with the couple's problems early enough to avoid the inevitable blowouts that a lot of them ended up having. So that's what ended up happening, is that Keisha had enough, basically. I'll go on to our first gay couple, the lesbians, Zoe and Jenna. I loved and hated them in so many ways. At the very start, I was not keen on Zoe. Zoe is the butch lesbian. She comes from quite a small town, only gay in the village vibes. There are a few things she said in sort of like that introductory episode that were red flags for me, personally. I like a female who looks like a female. is one quote from it that I felt very weird about. And all of her friends seem to really be cishet white builder men, and that concerned me generally from the point of view of being a queer person. But actually she was a lot more progressive than I expected. Jenna is a vegan, which caused a lot of problems between the two of them. Zoe wants kids, Jenna mostly no, but it's not entirely no, and neither of them really wanted to move from their towns and lives. They did kind of come to a compromise at the end that they think that when it comes to it, they would both sort of move somewhere in the middle, rather than one or the other of them moving to the other's place, which I thought was a very adult way to navigate that. However, I don't know what's going to happen with this whole kid scenario, but my gay liberal commie ass has a solution for them. Do we need to be so traditional when discussing marriage? I mean, ladies, you got married on a TV show at first sight. Not exactly traditional. So my suggestion is Zoe can find a friend who also would like a child, or other friends who would like to have and raise a child, and they can sort of be the co-parenting situation, and Jenna doesn't really have to be super involved. It would kind of just be like stepmom vibes maybe, you know, like not as much responsibility necessarily on her, you know, flexibility there. What do we think? I'm pretty sure from my current knowledge that this is the only couple that are still together romantically from the show. It took them a while, but they kind of started to understand and respect each other's differences, especially when it comes to like Jenna's veganism, and her business is very eco-friendly centric. So her veganism is her lifestyle. It's not just her food preferences, and they both seem to have the same sort of values generally, even though they may not have a lot of things like obviously in common, which is what a lot of these other couples were complaining about, of like, oh, we have nothing to talk about, we have nothing in common. It's like, okay, but your values align, so work from there, babes. I also found that these two were like one of the very few couples who had any fucking backbone when it came to arguing with other people, other couples. Like the gays were really just on it this season. They were just the most entertaining to watch, to be honest, especially the gay men, who are my favourite of the lot. Sorry, but I'm also not sorry. This is where I said, like, where my statement earlier of being like, Zoe was actually a lot more, did I say the word liberal? I can't remember, but you know, like that than I was expecting, because she was actually very articulate when she had arguments with other people, usually the men. And that's actually really funny to me, because she was on the men's side. She was at all of the bachelor parties and all that shit. That was something I saw Zoe and Jenna had in common, with those values and articulating themselves well in these kinds of arguments with other couples or people. Because yeah, Zoe first, I think Jenna then started to back her up and also do similar things as well as time went on, but Zoe was kind of the first out of the two of them to call out some of the other couples' bullshit, or some of the other people's bullshit, particularly when some of the other couples blew up and had a wife swap, basically. But also when I say they had a backbone, is that they didn't then pretend to be besties with the couples they were having arguments with, which most of the other couples were way too happy to just play besties until the next argument. Whereas I absolutely just, yeah, same. Is it a gay thing? Maybe it is, but I also would not have wanted to fucking play nice and say, oh, hi, how are you? How was your homestay? Oh, it's great. Had a good time, thanks. You know, no. Then we shall move on to Whitney and Duca. So Whitney, I really had some problems with. Like, I wanted to be on her side because I did really feel for her story. It is awful the way her mother died. I'll stop there because now it feels a bit rude, but I could empathise and understand and relate to Whitney in being very closed off to this idea, closed off to romantic partners, closed off to Duca specifically as well, and having this like wall up. Like, I really related to it, and I was just hoping that some magic was going to happen. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. It didn't. I was really struggling because she just got more and more unlikable. But I'm also very aware of reality TV really loves to make black women the villains. So, like, what they showed us did not make her look good. Like, ever. Like, maybe 1 or 2 times it made her look a little bit more understandable and likeable. I don't think she tried as hard as what everyone tried to make it seem like to make things work with Duca. There was also a lot of stuff that was not, I don't know, caught on camera or shown to us that Whitney was saying about Duca, that especially as the show, like this season went on, was hard to tell if that actually happened, went down. Like, she was saying he was saying, oh well, after this show I'm gonna get so much pussy you don't even know, and like, it's, you know, very weird things. Even if you were there for that reason, I don't think he would say it because no one would like you very much, you know. So there was a lot of stuff between the two of them that was very confusing. A lot of work was put on to Duca to, I don't know, be more or be different. But I just feel like throughout this season, you kind of just saw that Duca just didn't really have a super emotive face. And I think that was just one of the problems that nobody took into consideration. It was very, very weird. Whitney just kept calling him fake and all this little thing. And it's just like, what? But also, personally, are you always the exact same person around absolutely everybody? Not many people I know are the exact same version of themselves in every situation. You know, like, work you is not going to be socializing you. Also, like, me personally, I have a lot of different hobbies and interests that just acquire or require certain things from me in those situations. It doesn't mean that isn't me. And like, I think as a ADHD autistic who was masked for most of my life, that was one of the first things I mentally had to kind of look at and analyze, because it is a really big thing in like BPD diagnoses, is that you kind of don't know who you are, which is one of my diagnoses as well. You kind of don't feel like any you is the real you, and every you is a you that you've created and made up for different people. And kind of healing from those things for me personally, and still seeing those differences in different spaces, is something that I've now learned is just part of who I am. Is I am a physical embodiment of contradictions. Like, ADHD and autism are kind of a contradiction in and of itself. So yeah, you know, again, we only know what we see and how it was put to us by the editors. But I quite liked Duca. Whitney was also very friendly with one of the other people on the show that I did not like at all, April, so that did not help her case, babe. There is no way to continue or finish talking about Duca and Whitney without talking about Gemma and Matt. I was pissed. I was so angry at what happened in this show. So I thought Gemma and Matt, perfect couple, you know? They looked like they were meant to be together, both tattooed, both hairdressers / barbers, you know? They had so many of those things in common. And then just, unfortunately, Gemma's very sexual sense of humour put him off, which I can understand. For me personally, that would also be a lot if I just met someone who I was supposed to have like a very serious long-term relationship with, and they were saying the kinds of things that Gemma was saying, but also he then just stopped trying. He just stopped trying. He just shut her out, let her keep thinking that there was something that could be done, you know, to work on it or work through it. And again, next to no input from the experts on either of these two couples. We did see a tiny bit of input where we saw Whitney talk one-on-one with the Australian lady, whose name I don't know because I don't care what the experts' names are, sorry. And then, you know, we saw a more vulnerable side to Whitney, which was good because, oh my god, they did not make her look likeable in that cut. But they just did not do anything to help Matt and Gemma out at all. And then Matt and Whitney somehow developed a connection and wanted to pursue each other. I will talk more about that drama later, but that's my brief summary there of them. I'll also quickly talk about the other couple that came in late, Sophie and Jonathan. Number one, I am so gay. Sophie is so hot. Again, with this show, all of the women were hot. They were all so hot. And most of the men were so hot. Except a few who were definitely punching. But like, Sophie specifically, what the fuck? So this is giving you context as to why I am so pissed off with Jonathan. So Sophie sort of lives on the outskirts of Manchester, I think. I think she's from somewhere else in the countryside that's posh. I can't remember. And Jonathan is quite northern. He's from Yorkshire. And he has values from the 1950s, which was a problem for not only Sophie, but everyone else at the table. Everyone else who had to hear him talking about his awful opinions. I thought they were quite a cute couple because they're like opposite worlds, kind of, you know, making up for what the other doesn't have. You know, he's a joiner / carpenter, which is, you know, a very sought after skill. He, you know, has work for life basically. She works in tech, is very like refined. He likes to go travelling. She's preparing for a future, blah blah blah. Her parents had very weird like comments and opinions on him, saying that he wasn't financially responsible, and what are you gonna do when you get pregnant? He can't look after you, and blah blah blah. It's like, for a start, I didn't think that's what she wanted anyway, but apparently it was. That sounds very different to what was put across when they were sort of brought in to the show. I think they have quite a big age difference too. Sophie was 26, or at least she's 26 now, might have been 25, who knows. Jonathan, he was 32. I think that might be one of the biggest age gaps of this season, and you really see the age difference between them because she definitely has like a lot more of like younger millennial / Gen Z values and opinions and outlook on the world, and he is definitely like a mid-millennial who's kind of behind it. He definitely embodied a lot of the stereotypes of northern white men. Like, I don't believe you're all like that, but he was not the best rep for all of you, trust me. So for one, he stopped feeling like a passion or like a sexual attraction. I'm like, how? How did you do that? How? It's been 4 weeks, how? But then he told her when she was going to the gym with some of the other blokes, oh, don't do what they're doing because I don't like a woman with really big legs. And then he just kept digging his hole. And he was digging the hole more every time it was brought up in conversation with other people, including experts. And he just kept like doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down. Every single time it was brought up, he would just knuckle down harder on this point that he made. Quote unquote, I don't like a woman with horse legs. I don't like a bigger woman. So if you gained a lot of weight, I would, you know, say it nicely, but I would say things like, hey, maybe we should go for a walk and blah, blah, blah. And like, this is where a lot of the other arguments came in. This is where my point about Zoe and Jenna comes in, and also generally about the gays. All of them were saying that you should not make comments on a woman's body, full stop. Thomas, who I haven't gotten to yet, but I love, said no man should make any comments on a woman's body, ever. And Jenna was trying to explain why those comments were inappropriate, but also just like horrific, especially in 2022. And he just, no. That man genuinely dug his grave. He dug his grave. And like, they got to final vows. She said really nice things, and they you know, she was looking forward to it. And before he started his, he went, oh, I feel bad now. But he still said, I want to be with you. And they were together when they left. They weren't together at the reunion, but it's fine, it's fine. But like, I believe he should remain a man of few words. He is a man not good with words or feelings. Next, I will go with Shanita and Jordan, who was like everyone's safe couple, right? They were like, from the start, they had a few problems here and there. One of them was Shanita said that she thinks Jordan has ADHD, and he got very sad about that. I think she's right. You know, like, I agreed when I was watching it. Yeah, maybe she shouldn't have said it, especially not like right now. But like, I think she's right, babe. I really, Jordan. From one ADHD to another. Go get a diagnosis, love. You know, but they were pretty on it when it came to communication. They could talk through their problems and feelings without like really upsetting each other. You know, they were doing really well. And then as we were getting closer to the end, Jordan said, you know,
I said to myself after the last time I lived with someone, the next time I live with someone, I have to love them. And I know we're not quite there yet, but it has to be there.
Which, from Shanita's, you know, aside comments, as well as her face, listening to that, that was not on her radar. Also, I just have to like side comment here. Shanita has the best reaction, like faces, facial expressions throughout the whole thing. It's so funny. Even if she had nothing to do with the drama, you would get a reaction shot of her fucking face because she was so funny. I love Shanita. Like, I have opinions of the couples, but I also have opinions of the individuals, and I don't know, I felt kind of lukewarm about Shanita and Jordan. Turns out I was right, but I do really like Shanita. I think she's really, really funny. Like, it's a shame because, you know, his immaturity is definitely what led to them having a lot of fun. They laughed a lot. You saw a lot of really good times between them, but it also was the downside and the downfall of their relationship as well. And he definitely wasn't emotionally mature enough, and this is what Shanita was saying too, and he agreed for it, because after final vows, he bailed. They turned up to the reunion single. They were not together, and everyone was fucking devastated. Fucking devastated. Absolute shocker. Fucking hell. I don't know. I don't think I was shocked. I think I was shocked that it actually happened before whilst they were still in the program. I thought it probably happened after they left, but like, no, it happened before they even reached the reunion of the show. I was like, oh fuck, yeah. But I also have other pairing options for her, like I had for PJ. I think Duka is a really great option because they both said each other as well in those like little truth box bullshit times, and he was kind of like trying to make some moves on her at the reunion, and then Jordan blocked himself right in between the two. So I'm just waiting for Duka and Shanita to date, you know. My own personal opinion is that Duca is better looking than Jordan. And I think he's more mature. So go off, Shanita. The weather swiftly changed. A storm came rumbling in. So this is the next day as I continue trying to record this video in pieces. The next couple is George and April. I just want to say here as well, before I continue on with anything I am about to say, I did see the news that George has been arrested for domestic abuse or something along those lines. I read the words of like gaslighting, manipulation and coercion. Number one, apparently these women did reach out to the show's producers to warn them about him, but either way, George was on this program. And I think watching this season and watching him in this season is actually a very good example of emotionally abusive men, because he was very good at handling and controlling the narrative. And like, whilst I did not like April in this show, I do not believe she deserves to be with an abusive man. So, but yeah, they were one of the most ridiculous couples for me to watch personally. Starting with the honeymoon, what the fuck ever happened with this kiss? Because like, right, so I think that that's something everybody needs to have a discussion with their partners about. What kind of physical affection is okay with other people besides your partner? So one, clearly that conversation had not been had, and two, I was on George's side in this particular argument, because I do see a lot of cis straight men sexualizing relationships between women, which a lot of the time delegitimizes the experience of queer women, because they don't see girls kissing girls as cheating, because it's not equal to their relationship or their kind of perception of a relationship. Again, that is something you need to have a conversation with your own partners about. One of the things is because one, it was their honeymoon for a start. Two is that it hadn't been sort of discussed at all. Adrian did bring up a point somewhere that, you know, maybe she was doing it because she thought that he might like it, which is also a valid point, but I don't know if that was ever actually then addressed or brought up ever again, or whether she was just doing it for a lol. Also, April's friend on the Unveiled show said, you know, first of all, he should ask, is she bisexual? Because that will also have an element to whether it is appropriate or not for their relationship, which I think is a valid point. Her friend made a lot of really good points on Unveiled. But like, also the story just kept changing as well. For me, the thing that bothered me about George in that situation was that he sort of just like, and I feel like this is quite a manipulator move, to be fair, but he sort of let her talk him out of being angry, even though obviously he was still angry about it. And then instead of actually really resolving that situation, he then told he told a few people at the first dinner party about it. And this was another thing that I really got annoyed with, was her reaction. Like, yeah, of course he's gonna tell somebody about that, but like, you know, a gossip in this show is the same as everything else. In the real world, you tell one person, they tell somebody else, who tells somebody else, who tells somebody else, and eventually most of the people at the dinner party knew about it but didn't really know the whole story, because obviously George only told like his version of the story, and then April told her version of the story, and nobody actually kind of met in the middle to have that proper discussion. But, you know, some of the things I liked about that was that it is something brought up into the conversation of what is considered cheating. I think it's a very personal decision, really. Like, there's definitely a lot of grey area when it comes to queer community, because like, for example, in this show, Thomas, who is one of the men of the gay couple, does kiss a lot of people, he flirts with everybody, but that's just him and his personality. And that was something that Adrian was fine, comfortable comfortable and okay with. Whereas like with the April situation, that's not really what she's just like. It was like a one-off thing that was a bit out of the blue. Again, depending on how some of the stories were told, it seemed like she did it when he'd walked off. Some of the stories, it was right in front of his face. You know, it was just very blah. You never really know what happened. And even with the stuff we are shown, you never really know what happened because it's so heavily edited. But like, I am on Team Thomas, where I felt like that they were the fakest couple, because George was very good at manipulating the narrative around him, but he did start losing his abilities to do that. So like, Thomas would hear a lot because George would come round to speak to Adrian about the relationship problems. And then in front of the couch, in front of everybody and the experts, nothing was wrong. Everything's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like it was a calculated decision to have those conversations with Adrian in Adrian's flat where Thomas could hear everything, because he knows that Thomas has an incapability to keep quiet, especially about things that bother him. And that's another reason why I'm on Team Thomas, because same. That would have really bothered me a lot too. Adrian had a lot more patience because he thought George was his friend. But as we saw some of these things unraveling, and we saw George trying to shut Adrian down in the, is it commitment ceremonies? I don't know. Therapy on the couch. Adrian, I think in that moment, saw what George was really like. I want to speak on that moment as well briefly before I move on. A lot of the times on Married at First Sight, in the commitment ceremony, they talk about it like a forum where the other couples can also interject some of their thoughts and what they've heard and whatever, their feedback. But this particular moment, interestingly to me, was shut down. So like, when Thomas walked out, as usual, but Adrian had stayed to call George out on his bullshit, George was trying to shut him down, and the experts shut Adrian down and said, if you don't respect the forum, leave like Thomas did. As an autistic person, really bothered me, because there are huge problems with how this show works. And one of them is that they have no clear-cut rules, / the rules that you kind of understand get changed. And that was one of the rules that they changed, and it really annoyed me that they've allowed other people to have like input, but this one particular time they decided not to. I think it's another one of those moments where even therapists and experts in relationships can be fooled by manipulative, abusive partners. I know quite a few people who've been in that situation in real life, that when they've had to go to couples therapy or counselling or whatever with their abusive partner, many times the therapist takes the abuser's side because they are just that good at manipulating the situation and the story. They're very good at using their words, you know. And that was one of the things that made me really dislike watching and listening to George, is I could see a lot of those ways that he used his language to be like especially persuasive, like the fact that he kept calling his children his cubs, or like, there are 4 other heartbeats to think about in this situation. I was just like, disgusting. Now on to my favourite couple, Thomas and Adrian. So one of my favourite things about maths is when on the wedding day at the aisle, they find out some of the like silly similarities that the couples have between each other. This was something I really enjoyed with the last Australian Married at First Sight with Dom and Jack. They were both Italian, they were both vegetarian, they both like massive dog lovers. You know, those sorts of things were just so sweet to see. So like, it was a similar sort of vibe with Thomas and Adrian, that Thomas was like, right, they have to be a Scouser, they have to live near or be willing to move to Liverpool because I'm not leaving. And they did set him up with another Scouser, but he was / is living in Manchester but sees Liverpool as his home. So that was something I thought was really sweet. I won't lie, my very first impressions of Thomas were not good. I just did not think I was going to enjoy watching Thomas, but I am very happy to say I was wrong. And actually, Thomas is my favourite / the contestant I relate most to. I just think it was just so funny. I think a lot of it came from, again, some of the things that were said in that introduction that made me kind of wary of Zoe is similar to like how I felt about Thomas, that Thomas said, you know, I want a traditional marriage and, you know, that sort of thing. I was like, traditional marriage? The gays? You know, like it really felt like the show had to choose the straightest gays. But thankfully, actually, as the season progressed, everyone got a lot gayer. So, but yeah, so some of those things I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I think I quite quickly started to be on Thomas's side, because at the wedding, like after the actual ceremony and it was at the dinner, Adrian's best friend was really interrogating Thomas. And I do understand why he was bothered by that. And I think he made good points. And you do see Thomas progress quite a lot through this show. And I think him meeting Adrian, regardless of how things end, they have kind of both helped each other a lot in many ways. Yeah, you know, like Thomas was saying that he wanted to have this conversation with his now husband, rather than being interrogated by his friend. And he did say that, and Adrian was understanding, and he did sort of feel similarly, but also of course he was defensive of his friend. But I think, you know, Adrian's patience definitely was helpful, but so was Thomas's like willingness to come back to a conversational disagreement to resolve it. Like they had a massive blowout on their honeymoon, maybe several, I can't remember, but there was one in particular by the pool. Apparently that there were other people there as well. I was like, that makes the scene make a lot more sense now too, as to why Adrian looks so embarrassed, because yeah, vibe, but also that is absolutely very me. I will make a scene in public if you've really done my head in, so where can I find me and Adrian, you know? Also, I think Thomas has ADHD. He was sharing ADHD awareness posts on Instagram during October, so maybe this is why I relate so much to Thomas, is the ADHD, inability to control my emotions and self-regulate. Same, impulsive decision making. But that is just a guess. I don't think I've actually seen him say that anywhere, but it would make a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense. Also, Sophie was diagnosed with ADHD during the filming, so anyway, sorry, carry on. I really loved watching these two, because even though they were like super up down a lot, especially at the beginning, they really showed an ability to have good communication, which is like, this is what I watch these programs for, is to see the couples who really do work on their communication skills and show you ways of having uncomfortable conversations with people that you care about and how to like navigate that. And this was without the experts' help. Like, they were doing all this by them fucking selves. The experts did absolute fuck all. They did fuck all. But you could really see that they had built a really important foundation of friendship between the two of them, which also led to them generally looking more coupley, because Thomas is very tactile, really likes touch. You could see as well in a lot of the dinner parties, he would be checking in with Adrian as well. And it was just, you know, very sweet. Some of the things that we didn't see on the show, which I know about through following him on Instagram, Thomas, after quite a lot of these arguments with the other participants, ended up spending a lot of time by himself in the flat, which is quite sad, to be honest. I wish that they had done more to navigate like inter-group conflict on the show, but they really don't give a fuck. They don't care. It's for the views. Trauma, let's get the camera out, babes. And when Gemma joined the show, she spent a lot of time with Thomas, because Matt was a piece of shit and never wanted to spend any time with her, so they became besties. And you know, Adrian did want to go out and socialise with the other people, and Thomas didn't want to stop him from doing that, which again is another thing that I really liked and appreciated him sharing online, and wish was actually on the show, was, you know, you don't always have to do everything with your partner. They are an important part of your life, but it's not like, I just would like more conversation around breaking down some of those traditional stereotypes around what marriage and romantic relationships should be. I really do think that a lot of this season's cast did quite a good job of that, because a lot of them, as I said, came out without a husband or a wife, but did come out with really good friendships, either with the partner or with some other people on the show. And somebody on, I think, one of the last few unveiled shows, one of the superfans or whatever it's called, said that, you know, there is a lot of emphasis put on romantic relationships, but, you know, friendships, platonic relationships are really, really important too. Like, having a good community as a whole is really important. And I think that particularly Thomas and Adrian did show that even though they ended the show not together romantically, they ended the show as basically best friends. This is as far as I understand it. They have great banter. They both love each other for who they are, and that was something else I really loved watching about them, is that, you know, even the things that bothered them about the other person, they were like, you know what, I wouldn't actually even want to change it, because I do also secretly love that about you. I do also really like the conversation that came up with Adrian, particularly on the show, that, you know, he personally waits a long time before initiating sex or having sex with a partner. That's just how he has always been, so that was something that didn't happen in the experiment. And how, you know, a lot of people were trying to say to him, well, this is just a friendship then, he's just your friend. And Adrian was like, no, I don't see Thomas as my friend, or like just as his friend. And I think that as a, I'm not trying to put any other sexuality labels on other people, but it really felt relevant and relatable to my experience as someone on the asexual spectrum, that my experience of sexual attraction is not really what is discussed in the mainstream media. So the way that Adrian talked about how he progresses with romantic relationships, where he feels comfortable, was very relatable to me and that part of my experience as well. And it was just nice to have that kind of conversation around it. As I sort of briefly glossed over, they were in a lot of fights with the others. The main fight that Thomas was in came from some, again, I don't even know what exactly started it, but in the reunion they showed sort of a compilation of all of the fights he'd had on the show with other people. They missed out a lot. They made Thomas look really bad in that. They missed out a lot of things that they had shown on TV. They missed out April stirring the pot. They missed out April changing her story up a lot. You know, so it all kind of started from, apparently somebody was bitching about Shanita and they said it was Thomas. Thomas said, never have I ever. It was April who said this. Then him and April were constantly fighting. Shanita was like, I don't care anymore, I'm just gonna go do me. Bye. Somewhere in there as well, Jess got thrown in, not really sure what happened. She left by that point, so who really knows. And she, in the reunion, said, I fucking never did or said that. Then another one of the fights was because of the way Whitney was treating Duca, which I agree with. Duca was just trying his best, mate. But also, I could see Adrian's point that he was trying to make, that, you know, Whitney had her walls up, she's trying to be vulnerable, she's trying to put the effort in, you know, from her side, blah, blah. So, like, you know, it was nice seeing these two being able to call each other out as well. And even if it was kind of an explosive argument and Thomas would walk away, they would come back to resolve it between the two of them, or Thomas would often, usually, confront the problem, which again I think is like a skill and a tactic that is not appreciated enough. I often have to remove myself from triggering or angering situations to prevent myself from doing or saying things that I may later regret / I may not mean in the moment, just to be mean. But a lot of people just call it like, oh, you're just walking away, you're just walking away. It's like, well, he would come back to sort it out later. Whereas there were other people on the show who did just walk away and never came back to finish the conversations. Matt. So yeah, this season had a lot of drama. But yeah, I just generally, my problem with watching the show is that, you know, Part of it is we don't see nearly enough of what we should be seeing. The Australian show seems to go on for a lot more episodes than the UK one. I don't know what the difference is, why that happens, but there are so few episodes with the UK one, and they do seem to shove a whole week. They squeeze around 8 different couples' weeks down into like 1 or 2 episodes to watch, and then you have one whole episode for the dinner parties, which is what the experts were supposed to watch, but I'm pretty sure they didn't watch one episode. Like there was one dinner party where we didn't have the experts commentary on it, so I don't know if they actually watched or not, or they were just informed, and that was the really big dramatic blowout one in the Bake Off tent, my dudes. Like, the one where you really needed them to be watching it, they fucking didn't bloody watch it. They never intervened once in a blue moon. Like, this expert helped Keisha and Kwame to initiate sexual intimacy. She definitely could have done more for other couples who needed some help with the intimacy side of things. I think someone did come in to speak to Whitney and Duca when they had some of those intimacy like challenges to do, but then they left. Didn't really then see what happened after that. As I said, the Australian lady spoke to Whitney, but like for the most part, they didn't speak to any of these people one-on-one. They would sometimes let the group chip in and sometimes tell them to go shut up their ass, even though it was like an important thing that they were trying to say, you know. So my autistic brain was very angry that the rules just kept changing. There wasn't any kind of like one-on-one time either with singular people or singular couples with any of the experts. There was also no kind of like group, like proper group therapy or workshops or work being done to help everybody navigate some of these things. Like, of course, the major part of that is it's a reality TV show. They want the drama. I understand that, but it does really annoy me. And then I was reading an article that the dude expert said that they were watching the show as it was airing and struggled to keep up. Apparently a lot of people were tweeting at him. I have no idea what's going on. All of the experts like advice seems way out of left field. No idea where it's coming from. Makes no sense to the situation. You're letting people on the couch just bullshit you into like thinking that they're doing fine when actually there's loads of problems that they just aren't saying. But if you had watched this, that and the other, you would have seen that. But also, like, even though he was there, he also found it very hard to keep up with what was actually going on in the show, who was doing what. And he said that a lot of it is probably to do with, you know, a week's worth of content, hours and hours and hours of content being squished down into 1 to 2 episodes ish, and that they just did not have enough participation in anything else that was going on. Like, he did agree that a lot of their advice and comments in those commitment ceremony meeting things, in context of other stuff that had been happening in the week, didn't make any sense. And they definitely did put a lot of shit on the wrong people. And he definitely was saying that a lot of it must be coming from the, I don't know, whether it's producers or editors or, you know, some of the higher up people involved in the actual like production and execution of the show, is that they really skewed a lot of what was going on, missed a lot of other context that would have been important. But also I still just don't think that the experts were as involved as they should have been, and it really did make them look silly. They looked really silly a lot of the times. Their comments in those meetings were just so off. They looked really, really bad. They looked bad. How did they get it so wrong so many times? Like, again, I think I said a lot of this last year, but they need to be doing more one-on-one therapy, couples therapy, group therapy, mediating. You know, get in some mediators. If it's not what they do, get somebody in to do it. But also, like, you know, yeah, I know this fucking honesty box is for the drama, but that's what it does. All it does is cause drama. There was a really brilliant one in, I think, the last dinner party that Thomas and Adrian were at, where it said, you know, who do you think the couples are that will make it and the ones that won't? There was no right answer. There was no right answer for him, but he did choose the right answer in my opinion, which was he chose not to answer the who won't make it question and just said who he thinks will make it and why he thinks that is. And he was like, and that's all I have to say. But it was still wrong for everybody else, obviously. A lot of those question box questions are just tricks to destroy whatever calm, happy, healthiness of the situation there is. Like, it's the same for when it's just the couples doing those question boxes on their own. You know, if they can't approach it with a sense of humour and understanding that this box is just to cause drama, it just does a lot of damage too. Because like, I did see a lot of Adrian and Thomas could do those questions together, and it was fine and funny because a lot of it was sort of joking around. They'd come to understand each other a lot more, but April and George couldn't because they were still in such a rocky, walking on eggshells kind of space because they hadn't worked through any of those problems. You know, and I also feel like if the sexpert had come in a bit sooner with Adrian and Thomas and helped with, you know, not sex, but maybe more sexual intimacy, that who knows, maybe Adrian and Thomas might have continued on and completed the show as a couple, maybe would have still been a couple today. We don't know. Either way, I'm still very happy that they are like besties. They are very cute. I love them so much. Also, I posted on my Instagram stories on my birthday saying I was doing a catch-up watch of Married at First Sight for my birthday, and how the gays, as I said earlier, did not get up and play nice with people who had been fucking assholes, and I was very there for it. Jenna and Thomas shared my story, but Adrian sent me a voice message saying happy birthday, which I thought was so sweet, and I was very excited about that.
Hey Artie, happy birthday. I hope you have the most amazing day, and yeah, happy birthday. Lots of love, Adrian.
And, you know, I mean, as a fellow theatre gay, I would love to see Adrian in a show of some kind. I love his little musical theatre singing. So who knows, maybe maths will give him a boost of his theatre / performing career. I'm very up for that. Oh, before I fucking forget. So this is what I meant earlier by seeing the gays getting queerer as the show went on. So yeah, before they all joined the show, a lot of them felt very like, these are gays that are for the cis-hets who are watching the show, not for other gays watching the show. But as the season progressed, we saw the gays getting gayer and getting a lot more comfortable in their queerness, and especially Thomas. And he has said that a lot of it is thanks to Adrian. I think he said it on the show, but also he said it on Unveiled and I think Instagram too, that Adrian just made him feel so comfortable and safe as himself. We see his style just absolutely like go wild. It was queer icon personified. That's just something I really like to see, is, you know, that a lot of these casting choices are often made with an audience in mind, and it really did feel like the audience that these queer people were being catered to was just a cis straight one. They needed acceptable gays, and I'm just really happy that they got a lot gayer as it went on and a lot more free to be and feel like themselves, because Thomas looked fucking incredible in his outfits, in Keisha's boots. I didn't know they were Keisha's boots until I think I watched Unveiled. And also I just really enjoyed that, watching Unveiled and having a look at some of their social media and stuff, that even though Thomas was in a lot of drama on the show, everybody who was asked about him had nothing negative to say. Kwame said that they were both really great. Everybody also really loved Zoe and Jenna. Like, I just really enjoy the fact that overall no one actually really had anything negative to say about these people. It was just really nice to see that actually they were being appreciated, and I just wish we could have seen a lot more of those parts, you know, a lot of the good positive interactions with these people, because I know they really just like to focus on the negative stuff for drama, for clicks, for views, but it would be nice to see some of the positive things as well. And I absolutely would have been happy to sit and watch this show for another 4 weeks if it meant getting more of a backstory for everybody else. I also just want to say about the Bake Off dinner party where everything blew up, where Jonathan was like, oh, horse legs, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, you don't talk about a woman's body, shut the fuck up. Here is why you shouldn't do that. And then Kwame was just, he'd had enough. He was like, right, he's got his opinions. just leave it. I've had enough of this conversation. And I was like, yeah, vibes, even though I did not agree with him saying, you know, that's his opinion and it's fine, just leave him with his opinion. Not quite what I felt, but the rest of what he said, I was like, yeah, I feel you. And then when everyone was like watching Matt and Gemma blow up, and Gemma was like, did everybody know? And everyone was like, no, we didn't. And Kwame went, don't lie. Yes, we did. We all knew. Because like, yeah, they both kind of said at the retreats in their separate like gendered groups that they had an interest in the other person. Even though they maybe didn't know definitely, they definitely had their suspicions. But then I don't know if they maybe would have had that conversation. Like, I think that Gemma knew some shit was going on. She definitely knew something was going on, especially when Whitney said that. And then Thomas got into an argument there as well, walked off, was swearing at Duca. He was like, oh, don't be like that, all right, fuck you. And then Matt was comforting Duca, and the way Kwame was like, now the funny thing is, you're being comforted by the man who's taking your woman. And I was like, so like, that's something I did respect about Kwame, is that sometimes he would just tell the truth. And it was like, yeah, might feel a bit stirry in some cases, but sometimes you just need to be fucking honest, you know? To round off this video that's going to be like 2 hours long, I just wanted to say as well that I do feel like that the one positive thing that I really enjoyed about this show, particularly at the end, was just how a lot of them were willing to just let bygones be bygones and just, you know, put everything that happened on the show to one side and let it be, let it rest, not come back to it. Of course, there are a few people who were talking a lot of shit about people on social media or like in interviews for newspapers and magazines and stuff, which is fair enough. Like, what happened with a lot of those people, yeah, fair. As an overall, a lot of them showed a lot of respect and maturity. I don't know, like one of my examples is that when Whitney went off with Matt, came back to the reunion single, and then came back for the talk thing, whatever, Gemma said to Whitney, you know, like, she has no hard feelings against Whitney. Most of her anger and resentment was towards Matt and the way he treated her through the experiment, not anything actually to do with Whitney herself and what happened. Because, yeah, and I do agree as well that, you know, Whitney tried to handle it a lot better than Matt did. And when there was that sort of like spark between her and Matt, like, she, you know, they didn't do anything physically, but, you know, she definitely said that nothing would happen until things would be sorted with their current partners at the time. And you did see Whitney actually really happy with Matt, and it was nice to see, but also very sad how that came about, you know. Also sad that it didn't seem to work out, but I really respected Gemma's like adult ability to forgive Whitney and tell Whitney that she had no hard feelings towards Whitney. I do think it was very weird that everyone was like, whoa, think about Gemma, poor Gemma, blah blah blah, Gemma. Everyone would forget about Duca. Like, no one was like, oh, poor Duca, like, think about Duca's feelings, blah blah blah. But like, even Duca was nice and went and spoke to Matt at the reunion, which he didn't have to, you know. He was trying to understand what was going on and why they hadn't come to the reunion dinner party together. Thomas apologized to everybody for all of those silly arguments. You know, he said that it was absolutely silly that all of these things were happening, but I do think it's just what happens when you're in that kind of environment where you're taken away from a lot of your normal day-to-day things that keep you grounded, the people who keep you grounded, and you're around a bunch of strangers on TV being filmed almost all the time. I personally am not surprised that that was a thing that kept happening, but again, I do think it's nice to see people taking responsibility for their part in those things happening. April never admitted to her wrongdoings in that, which is where I still have teeth grinding annoyance about, because, you know, there were definitely a lot of things that she was doing that was caught on camera as shit stirring, changing the stories around a little bit. Yeah, you know, and also the way that Thomas and Adrian ended that show as well was, they may not have ended the show with a romantic life partner, but they did leave with a soulmate. I do really think they are such a great pair. Podcast, anyone? I'm obsessed with Dom and Ella from the Australian maths last season. I listen to their podcasts. So Adrian and Thomas podcast, but also I would listen to Thomas talking with a bunch of the others, like Shanita would be great, Gemma would be great. Can we get a podcast going for the UK maths lot, please? This is why I find watching the show quite frustrating at times, because there are some really, really good things about it that I think need to be on TV a lot more. Similar with the first UK maths season to this season is we did see a lot of really good male friendships that I think is important to see more on TV, is men being vulnerable with their emotions about their relationships and learning how to self-regulate and communicate better with and for their partners, and being able to be open with other men. And also it just always seems to be the thing that like everyone just absolutely loves the gays. And that's something I really like to see as well, because there's so much hatred out there, especially in the UK at the moment, generally for a lot of marginalised communities. It is really nice to see on these shows that that is not the reason for infighting, except from on the last season of Maths Australia, where that guy was actually low-key. But is there a low-key of being racist? But he was racist, and he was paired with an Asian lady. But it has been something that I've really enjoyed watching and thinking about and talking about. I do think a lot of those moments as well can be really great conversation starters within your own real life relationships. There was an argument between, I think, Jonathan and Sophie, where Jonathan was like, well, I'll just never talk ever again then. And my mum scoffed and laughed at it. And I said, Mum, you've said that to me. So like, you know, it's those moments like that that happen in real life, that being able to see it on TV in sort of a detached way can make you see a different point of view on your own actions. Because whilst I've already had that conversation with my mum, her being able to watch that and agree that his response was silly not only shows growth in her, but also I think could be really beneficial for other people watching the show. A lot of the responses you see on the show are so common in real life, but are actually incredibly unhealthy when it comes to trying to communicate with people you love. With that, I will shut the fuck up now. Hopefully that's it. Hopefully I don't need to film any more. I know I've missed so much, but I wanted to just do sort of like an overall info dump, like what happened in this season and who I love and what the fuck is this and this is why I like and hate the show. Thanks, bye. But feel free to info dump any of your favourite parts in the comments. I will continue to respond to comments on this. Like the video for the algorithm, helps me a lot. The comments in the comment section also help the algorithm. But as I said, I will be happily info dumping back and forth with you if you want. Subscribe to the channel. I'm very, very close to 600 subscribers on my channel. It'd be cool if we reach that soon. Thanks. So subscribe if you want to see more of me talking about disability stuff and info dumping on my favourite topics. Yeah, share my video with other people who also watch and enjoy maths. Please try to be respectful in the comments as well. Don't be super nasty to or about any of the people on the show, to or about me. You know, it's not that deep. It's not that deep, guys. You don't have to viciously attack anybody in defense of somebody else. It is chill, you know. It's just bants. But yeah, that's my video, and I will see you next week. Bye.